Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait just a minute while people come into the room.
Is everyone staying warm?
Oh, it's
Yeah, it's better today.
it's a heat wave today, Donna.
My feet are still cold.
Let me
Yeah.
tell you, I woke up to that -2 degrees. I just went right back to bed.
Right.
I'm not going out in that stuff.
Uh,
Nobody's
work-
breaking out their bikinis.
I worked too hard and too long, man. I'm staying inside. That's what I worked for, not having to go out now.
Don and I keep trying to go out to the community center, to walk, and it's been so cold. But we did go out, like you say, it was a heat wave today, but only made it 3 times this year, and the month's almost over. It's just too cold to be out for us old folks.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but that snow and ice and walking the sidewalks can be pretty treacherous if you're not.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I think everyone has filtered in. Thanks for joining us tonight, or today, sort of evening time. And I appreciate everything you guys do to help the League of Women Voters, Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte be the best organization it can be. So we are going to go ahead and start with just asking. I know that a week ago, Saturday, Anne kind of presented a little bit on going over and reviewing our local positions as well as our state positions. And so I guess the first question is, do you think we should focus on something that isn't already in our positions in the upcoming 2 years for our program? Or is there something that we have a position on that you would like to investigate further or add some more insight with new legislation or conditions in our society? So I will just open it up for you to start the conversation.
I can't find my hand up thing. Where is that on React? I can't find it. There it is. There it is. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Oh my God, what did I
my God,
do?
look at that.
Oh, stop. Oh, raise hand. Here it is. Okay.
Yeah, no, you don't have to raise hand.
Oh my God.
There's less than 10 of us, so I think you can just speak as long as no one else is speaking.
Oh, geez. Okay, sorry. All right. So one of the things I mentioned about the positions is that we're stuck with education because there's only one position and it's very general about financing. And in the last couple of years, we've seen not only nationally, but especially Missouri, all these education bills regarding primarily gender, bathroom issues, sports issues, curriculum, banning books, prosecuting teachers if they teach the wrong thing. So I think we just really are out to lunch in a way on that because we never had to deal with this before. And suddenly we have all these horrible things that are happening in regards to education. So I think, I know doing a study is just a really long, tough road, but I really think we need to consider starting something about and maybe being kind of all inclusive for this kind of thing. I really don't know, but I don't know if we can consider that part healthcare too, under healthcare. I don't know, but I really think that's a huge, big hole in our positions. And I know that only because doing this for 4 years, the LAC, when we do calls to action for education bills, we don't have a stance.
Yeah, and
Well-
Reva signed me up for whatever we get going there. So like I do, there is a nexus to healthcare, just depends on how far we want to take it, right? Because like if kids aren't allowed to like use the appropriate pronouns and gender
Right.
name, there's increased suicidal ideation and things like that. So that I think there's definitely
And I'm not sure, Brandy, what do you think? Do you think that gender, being able to use their pronouns, do you think that's freedom of speech? I wonder
Hmm.
if that
but
can't.
there's probably also this idea though that do kids have
Oh,
have
Rights.
yeah.
because they're under 18?
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, like Donna said, do kids have rights at all? Like,
Yeah.
can they like take stuff to court? Can they, and yeah.
Well, related to
Yeah.
that, the new administration just declared that there's only two genders, so that makes it even
More
worse.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that just happened is schools, as well as churches and daycares, are now eligible to be rated to round up immigrants. So, that's an issue now for schools.
Wow.
Yeah, I think one other thing that I heard today that was kind of surprising, um, is that I believe there's a bill moving through Kansas right now that would allow public schools to hire clergy.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes. And I'm sure that may be in Missouri too, but I know, yes. To
Was
hire
that the
clergy.
counselors? Because they were gonna do
Yes.
that like Texas or something, or
Yes,
Oklahoma.
that is
Is that
correct.
two counselors?
Yeah. Well, that's,
Counselors.
yes, yes, I believe Kelly, they want the religious leaders like pastors to come in and actually counsel students. Whether students have a choice, I don't know. But if the only counselors are available are, ministers or priests or whatever, if there's no rabbis and if there's no Muslim leaders, I just think, yeah, they're going to be all Christian.
And
So,
male, probably only allow males.
Well, maybe. It's whether those people are licensed in their state. That makes a big difference. Like several of the ministers at the church I used to be active in were licensed psychologists, counselors. And yes, they certainly came from a Christian point of view, but it was what, that
mhm.
their ethics might have played into things, but it wasn't like they had a Christian platform. My concern is that that would not be the case.
Right.
People
That,
without actual training, like what you're talking about, Cheryl.
yeah, yeah,
Right, and I'm okay with that, but like you said, Cheryl, if they're counselors, they're counselors. They're not religious leaders when they're there. And again, is that going to be the
and
critique? Is there going to be some kind of overview that they make sure that they're not preaching Christian values, but just helping these kids psychologically?
yes, and I just want to say it because I know it's not. I just want to say it, but I wish there was some way to look at climate change or environmental issues. But I also understand there's only so much time and effort and staff. But having said that, I think what we're already talking about: reproductive rights, healthcare, initiative petition.
Mhm.
okay.
Well, but there are some climate things going on, and I think that climate change is a justice issue. And I
Oh,
think
that,
And
yeah,
it's also a health issue. So, I think, in fact, I just wrote to the committee on, I can't remember what it was, but it was about allowing pesticides, manufacturers
ac-
who, manufacture pesticides to not have to label according to the federal government's current restrictions.
yes. And I was at the UMER Action Committee meeting last night, and I was telling about some of the House bills that are currently being considered. There's like,
Yeah. And
ah,
then, and it's having a hearing today. It had a hearing today,
Hmm.
this bill. So,
So, so in thinking about, these areas and really, you know, when you're thinking about areas that the league should focus on, maybe thinking, each of us thinking maybe three areas
mhm,
or three or less areas, but also maybe also describe the project and how many people you think it would take
wow, okay.
to execute. So I know, Riva, you mentioned education. How many people would it take to really have a comprehensive study on education? Or is it something we could enhance or enable the study that we currently have as a position?
Boy, that's a good question. I mean, there's so many aspects now of education. Like I said, they kind of fall under different areas like healthcare and even, well, I'm not sure about social justice, but definitely healthcare. So, and education. So yeah, I think we'd have to parse it out, to kind of, um, like even curriculum for teachers and school board, how much power they have. There's so many little issues. I'm not sure if we'd have to parse it out and see if we could find either current positions that would work or do a study on these issues kind of as a whole, if that's even possible, and I don't know. So doing a study is a lot, at least 5 people, I would think, if not more than that. Because I think there's gonna be a lot of research needed
Well,
on that.
the reality too, you just think some things are so obvious, but back when we were having the issue about the residential down south, the residential facilities and their mistreating of kids and the education issue of that, I know Dolores took it and looked very hard at, surely we could come out opposing their licensing and et cetera under education and juvenile justice. We thought we could provide the two issues, but the state board, as they read it, did not see them being, even though they were worded broadly, did not see that they could take a
So,
stand.
Donna,
So
when you say juvenile justice, is there a position for something like that in the
well,
league?
we have a juvenile justice position, but it is on more court.
Oh,
How
gotcha.
the court deals with juveniles
Gotcha.
rather than, you know, it talks about them not being mistreated, but it's more from the court perspective, so we couldn't grab it for
Yeah.
the residential treatment homes and et cetera. So,
Yeah.
and right now, you know, I always have to give you past history. For years, one of the portfolios we had was education and climate and et cetera. But of late, the thing that was different then is that we weren't being attacked about voting. And voting is our brand, and voting suppression has to be a priority as such. But we always had education and climate and things. We had committees, and we haven't had those portfolios. Cheryl and Pauline had environment, but not new studies. They were trying to help us be more personally, I felt, the league and us individually, to be more sensitive to environmental issues, but not really doing lobbying or doing those sorts of things. But again, now we're being attacked. We're being attacked. Voucher system for education, taking public money and giving it away, and just, I think it'd be interesting to try to write up the focus for an education study, but I do think there is an interest actually statewide to look at, kindergarten through 12, not higher education, but higher education is under attack. Also, they eliminating all DEI. I think the University of Missouri and Columbia or such was, or maybe UMKC were trying to watch how they worded things because there was a threat to their funding if they were using some DEI issues. So, and maybe Mary Ann watches that closer from her experience with the.
Well, Donna, it is system wide. I mean, the whole anti-DI thing has gone through. So I'm not involved in it anymore now, but I mean, I just read what what I get, but it is system wide, and it's the way they've sort of skirted the whole issue is that they just do it instead of having a DEI office, there are just sort of remnants of it in various other committees and department efforts. I mean, people are doing it sort of underground now, so it's kind of a subculture.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but I think that people still have it in mind. It just isn't part of all university policy anymore.
And you
So,
can't have somebody in that position like DEI director kind of thing.
no, it's not, but if people are on the hiring committees, they look at who's applying and sort of what they could do to make the departments more diverse. I mean, it's being done on a kind of one-on-one approach now, as opposed to a committee, as opposed to a university approach.
Well, I work for the federal government, and so we have an executive order that was just issued, and today was the day that like folks
Right.
started getting laid off. Like we have
Right.
specific instruction that we can't even have, like, we have an email that says that we turn in people that are trying to use other language or skirt around this. So like it's gonna I think it'll be non-existent. Like it'll be a very much a chilling effect beyond the federal government. Because like I think it's gonna creep into like if you get grants from the federal government and stuff like that, like you can't have any of that.
So are there lawsuits being put out there against this?
I don't think there have been any filed yet.
Yeah, I think it's coming, but I don't think it's filed yet. I mean, the other thing is that especially in like the university, they actually, I mean, it's in their best interest to hire in order to especially at a place like UMKC, which is a public university and it has a very urban, diverse community. It's in their best interest to try to find faculty and to try to find personnel who are open to who are part of individual communities in the city. So I mean, some of it is that it's really too entrenched in kind of university culture to just suppress it. I mean, it'll kind of it'll keep on. It just won't be official.
Well, there was a bill that had a hearing today about funding state departments for DEI, and they're taking all that away. So I don't know how strict they're going to be, like you said, Brandy, about turning in people, who are actually still trying to hire in the state departments, people who are more diverse. So who knows what's going to happen with that?
I just want to take a moment though, Brandy, and say I am sorry because that is a stressful thing to have happen in your workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I cannot imagine how that feels to have that happen.
It's got to increase like the sense of paranoia among all of you. It's just really ugly.
Well, and this statement, I'm going to be colorblind and it's all going to be on merit is, pardon me, if you're colorblind, you are definitely, how do I want to say that? But it's already put people from different cultures at it's not equitable. They're not starting at the same place, and it's already gives the white male a higher.
Well, it's also an
Well,
insult. I mean, it's an insult. A colorblind, how can you be colorblind? People are all different colors. They all look
Yeah.
differently. They all look Asian or they look Mexican or whatever. Their ethnic look or their ethnic name. You can't be colorblind to that. So it's such a ridiculous thing to say that.
Yeah, yeah.
No matter how you use it, you can't ignore it and pretend that it doesn't exist because it does.
It means that I see you as a sort of version of a sort of white person.
Yeah, I mean, what does that mean? Colorblind?
It's offensive.
Yeah.
So, but back on education and such, it would take some fine tuning in how you could
Well, and
organize your committee. I mean,
Right.
what your focus was, because we're playing catch up.
right.
Well,
And
as
Donna, you mentioned that maybe we could get people from all over the state to be part of this committee, and they could then throw in their own ideas about how we can, I've only been on one study and I don't know that much about how to go about it. Greg, of course, who is on the ed committee, he's done a great job on his election study. So we probably need some people who are experienced in doing this. And I know Alice Kitchen has done studies to see how we can actually, what is the goal of our study? What are we trying to accomplish? And that's kind of a big thing because there's so many little bits and pieces that have been thrown at us. Like you said, we've been attacked in the last couple of years with all this stuff in the education department.
Well, speaking of the education department, Department of Education,
Mhm.
the president has said that he wants to do away with the
Mhm.
Department of Education, which I think makes it very likely that states could see that as permission to get rid of, and especially in Missouri, as red as
Mhm.
Jeff City is. So that
Mhm.
could be a preemptive
Mhm.
position, is that we support maintaining the Department of Education before they have a chance to start talking about dismantling, because I think they'll probably do that.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
DESE, our state organization, has had turnover. I mean, they're changing rules on how you're accredited. As we know, Hickman Mills is caught in that process right now. They met the rules, but now they've changed the rules. So, yeah. But I do hear Reva's concern, and of course Dolores is a good friend that I talk to frequently, who she is very much concerned about this issue and such, and sometimes just works on it on her own.
Yeah. Well, she has a lot of in-depth knowledge about from years back. I mean, she's been studying this stuff. And the thing about charter schools, Donna, I think we can use our position because our position right now, that if I remember correctly, has to do with adequately funding our public schools. And so that charter stuff and all those scholarships, that is not adequately funding our schools. So I think for those kinds of
Have
bills,
used that.
yeah, I think we've used that. But when it comes to the other stuff, we have nothing. So it's tough.
Well, and it's the 10 Commandments now that will probably pass to be in every school. So in Truman, where I've volunteered, it's in the middle of the Muslim community out south. And so although there is a school there, they still have kids that are going to the public school. So, what are you being told? And I believe in the 10 Commandments. It's not, I think.
Well, it's a church and state thing, and I don't know, I'm
Yes.
sure, Trump doesn't care about that, and I don't think our legislators do either. So I think it's kind of, a very difficult law to even get them to pay attention to, let alone respect.
And we may have a national decision, we may have a national position on that.
Okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
haven't
okay,
I think we may, but I don't remember for sure.
okay.
But
So I think so far, we've talked about education, DEI, a little bit on environment, just touched on health. Are there any issues that you think are important? And I'll especially ask Elizabeth or Janice or anyone who hasn't maybe had a chance to speak up, Marianne, on an area that you think is important.
I want to identify myself as somebody who has already been to one of these meetings, and so I didn't want to over contribute.
Okay.
But I will say what I said at the Monday meeting, which is I think we need to be very careful about how we spend our collective energies. There are lots of things that most of us would agree on, but the amount of studying and putting out information that something like this takes, I would try to think how many negatives are in the sentence. I would not like to have us go too far afield from our core message. And one of the things that we have found in the forums committee is that there are certain conservative candidates who are very reluctant to participate with us because our reputation, and I'm not sure what they base it on, but they think we're flaming liberals, and they don't see that it's to their benefit to participate in a forum when, you know, we bend over backward to be completely nonpartisan and to treat every candidate equally. But when we go into, I'm not even going to come up with an example, but something that is too far afield from our voting focus, I think we need to understand how we as an organization, both local, state, and national, are perceived, and that it may not be to our benefit to be perceived as, and this has nothing to do with the recent election, but to be perceived as overly liberal.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And the other thing is that when you're talking about issues like separation of church and state, that's well, there's a whole other organization called American United that's their sole purpose is talking about Jeffrey, and the Sierra Club and Friends of the Earth are looking at all these things on environmental issues. And I think it would be good if we pick a topic that's got another major national organization working on it, that we think about it in terms of a partnership or a relationship, that we could take separate parts of it, because I just see us getting into things where people are doing an enormous amount of work that all we would be doing is either, well, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to think of an original way to do something about church or state that AU isn't doing, and that the Sierra Club and Defenders of Wildlife and Friends of the Earth and all these people are all scrambling around working on that. So I think it's good to, if we need some, I think we need an issue that's relatively narrow and is linked to what we do all the time. And like we do voter education. I mean, and that we have topics that are related to disinformation and getting registered. I don't know. It's all kind of related to that. But I think we'd be spreading ourselves thin and narrow and wide if we got too far afield from that.
Let me be perfectly clear. I'm attending this meeting as preparation for the meeting that I'm going to lead tomorrow. Okay. However, I think that the current political agenda is crystal clear. And my wonder is, what is the benefit of taking a position that is not going to be supported and is clearly contrary to the current direction we're moving in?
Well,
I mean,
part of the deal is some of our candidates don't realize that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, because we can, voting is our issue, getting information out is our issue, and we are nonpartisan. We have 100 years of being nonpartisan, but we have always been political because
Well,
we've
and our
taken
pro-democracy. Sometimes pro-democracy is seen as liberal.
Right.
Yes.
Or civil rights, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and such. And what you do have to, because of how our grassroots organization, that we have to have a position to be able to do things. That's why sometimes we have to dabble our toes into things that we know
Right.
we're not going to be viewed by all people as, we kind of get in that crack where the conservatives are upset with us, and then the more progressives are upset because we can't move fast, and we can't, we don't have a position. We can't join something that probably 99% of the league members support, type thing. So.
Well, my question this brought up about these positions is because with the Legislative Action Committee, we do alerts every Sunday that you get while the legislature is in session between January and May. And when we do alerts, we have to have a position to oppose or support. And we came up with these categories. We have teams of categories, and we came up with them from the league's mission statements and from the league goals and what are the things, what are our mission, and they came up with all these different categories. So maybe we need to narrow what we're trying, maybe just narrow it down to voting and education, because that's not what's on there. We're supporting reproductive rights, and we're supporting a lot of things in our mission statement. So that's where we got these things from. So it's not like we're just out there, we
Yeah.
only follow certain bills. We don't follow all bills. So that may be something we need to look at in terms of, right, how far do we want to go as an organization? Do we want to support all these different issues, or should we just narrow it down to election and voting and education?
So I'm thinking what we're talking about here is what the Kansas City League does. And I threw out environment because I just do. But I also realize that's something the St. Louis and Springfield leagues are much more active in. And through Mickey and I, we're part of UMER, which is a 501c3 of the leagues from 5 states that have to do with the Mississippi River and all that. So I would think if we're talking about just what Kansas City League can do, I agree we ought to focus on just maybe 2 or 3 things. And education can take in so many things. And I mentioned initiative petition. I think that ought to be safe because that's in the bullseye right now.
Well, it's also an election. It's also an election, voting rights. That's a voting rights issue.
Yes, right. And I'm just very concerned that Missouri might lose that ability. The
the voter,
Missouri might lose the ability to bring up bills and so on.
the voter education committee has done a whole presentation on that. So, and we have we've especially commissioned or pamphlet kind of thing that goes out with it. So there's been a lot. I mean, Greg has done a fabulous job.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's kind of he's anticipated that, and he's got it ready to go again, because we had it for the last session, and he anticipates that it will come up again. So I think we've got a full barrel of ammunition that we can launch on that.
Well, if we're going to do, say, 2 things, then education and healthcare.
But again, we have to decide, what are we going to do? Are we going to do voting rights, get out the vote, election integrity, the IP is part of that. Are we going to go into reproductive rights? Are we going to go into LGBTQ? Are we going to go into firearm safety? Are we going to go into healthcare? I mean, those are all categories that we have in the Legislative Action Committee. We have like 12 things. There's 12 categories. So, and those came from the league. I think, I don't know if it was the Kansas City League or if it was from maybe the state league. I'll have to ask Ann. But these are categories that the League of Women Voters stipulated. These aren't things that we just made up.
Right, I know.
And
We
through
voted on it
voting-
2 years ago, and the state always votes on it and sends out their list. So it comes at both levels. And sometimes we're more prepared, like with initiative petition, we're really prepared to battle on that and such. And where you're talking, we may not be as prepared on firearm safety or on education or such. In fact, I was just thinking the other day, Grandmothers Against Gun Violence changed their name to
Gun safety.
Gun Safety.
Yeah.
Are we still in a coalition with them?
Oh, yeah, because Carol and Dave Webster belong to, in fact, it was through them, I met them through Grandparents for Gun Safety, because they felt that that would be a better way to advocate for gun safety. And they actually belong to the league now, and they are actually on our firearms committee. So we are, and he actually took our advocacy ideas to his group. So he sends out a newsletter every week to his group to contact legislators about these bills. And there are some firearm bills coming up. So yes, we definitely partner with them. He and Sherry Buchanan have done a great job on that committee, that team. So we are partnering with them. And I don't know if the reproductive health team is partnering with Planned Parenthood. We usually try to partner with these people because they do, as Cheryl said, you know, they have, or somebody said they have a lot of this information already. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We just go to them and say, you know, help us out here. Do you have talking points for this particular bill? So, you know, we are working with them and we get our information from them. We're not doing it all on our own.
Okay. So I know that we touched on a few minutes ago, what happens if we don't have enough resources? What initiative or project would be downgraded and perhaps not be part of our advocacy, rollout for the next 2 years?
Mhm.
And how would we decide which projects to
Right.
discontinue?
Right. I think that's a tough question. I mean, I guess we could, I don't know, anybody, I throw it out for a vote. I don't know.
Well, and part of it, you look at the election cycle.
Hmm.
The election cycle this year, really, I think we have April local elections, which are very, very important. But any other elections are going to be special elections. We won't have a August or November election. So this year we have time to regroup or to study or do things, because although we'll always be registering voters, we do not have to deal with get out the vote after the April election
Right.
and some things that so if we're going to do something, we really need to work the six. I mean, because now it used to take, any study was always considered a 2-year commitment. And we've gotten it down to, I know Cheryl and I did the statewide study on early voting because it was almost, should have been considered a principle of the league and didn't need a study. But I think we got that down to 6 or maybe 10-month study to get clear through it. So, and I think both Greg and Alice have condensed studies, and we're not taking 2 years to do a study.
Yeah.
So, realizing that maybe we could realign timelines with studies, are there any positions that we currently have that you feel like just aren't relevant or as relevant anymore?
We have some local positions that need to be updated rather than, just done away with. We have talked about in Observer Corps some issues as we watch the Jackson County legislature and how it's worked and the dysfunction we've seen there. And it's kind of like, we haven't done a study of the Jackson County since 1962 or 71 or something, and they've become a charter county since then. Do we even know how they function? And that's know your county study on a local level might be interesting, but it's I'm trying to pull back. I'm not wanting to take on this and other people so hardly mention it because it's you need the workhorses to do it. Not that it isn't a need to know more.
Well, it would be interesting to find out what the Kansas City League's foci are, and also what the really important issues are for all the other leagues around the state, because they may differ. St. Louis could differ from us and Springfield and all that. So on our LA Legislative Action Committee, we do have people from St. Louis and from Joplin and from Southwest Missouri. We have some people from those leagues. So it would be interesting to see maybe as all of our leagues together come and look at a state. I mean, the state must have some kind of list of our focus is. That's,
Yeah, no, there's on our website are
yeah.
all the positions from Kansas City as well as the state and national. Yeah.
And
Um,
this is our year to recommend state studies, right?
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes. Which is why we touched on at the beginning, like local or
Mhm.
state. Um,
Okay.
and obviously like all the local leagues kind of feed into the state.
Right.
So I think what I heard is like a local education study would be good, but perhaps a state education study really looking at the issues that impact education
Mhm.
now, which may have been different from
Mhm.
the issues that impacted when the state position was taken in, I think the study is from like 90s.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's a
I was just
different
looking
world.
at it and it's more on like funding, I
Yeah.
think. Um,
Mm.
and like going back to the national one, it says that it's relying on local chapters to come up with like expanded definitions. Like the national position is basically like equal access to quality education, but they don't define that. So like they leave that to the local. So is that a place? Because like in my mind, and I know it's probably a leap for some folks, but like these are our future voters, right? Like they need to be healthy, they need to be educated, they need to have a quality education. So like is that a place to start, is like coming up with our local equal access to quality education like
Mhm.
means to us?
Well, could we put that kind of like Brandy put that in kind of with the idea of citizens, educating citizens, and future leaders? Um, I think we could, I mean, that's what we do with voter education. So I don't see why we couldn't have that as part of a voter. I mean, that would line up, that would align with our main goal of getting, helping people vote and getting out that information. So educating people to become citizens, which includes voting and leadership, I think would be one way to look at it.
So, Riva, when you're saying helping people to become citizens or educated citizens, you mean all of us. So, like
Yes.
a good citizenship
Right.
type policy. I gotcha.
Yes, yes. So when we talk about, education from the very beginning, whether it's high school or college or whatever, but the education position we have now has to do with funding of public schools, because we want to make sure that our children are educated in all areas, but also in the area of citizenship. We used to have social studies, we used to have civic education. I don't think they even teach it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they've moved to what are they being tested on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that would
Okay.
be something that we as a league could support
Mhm.
is, and I'm just going to use the umbrella term civics education.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sure you all have heard how few people can identify the three branches of government. I mean,
Right.
a
Mhm.
basic kind of thing. But it would, if I ran the world, you wouldn't be able to get out of high school without being able to pass a pretty rigorous civics test.
Right.
Because you're talking about the basic job of schools is preparing children and teenagers to live their lives. And they need to know how national, state, and local government works and how they can be involved if they want to, how they can influence bills, how they can influence where their tax money is spent.
Right.
Uh,
And also, there is a certain movement to get voting rights for 16-year-olds so they can vote in local elections like
Mhm.
school board elections. And I don't know whether I don't think the league has a position on that, or if they do, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but that's another thing we could talk about that's important to talk about, to raise civic education, because students should be able to at least have some say in their school board elections, because they're the ones that are most affected by school board rulings. And I think this people over in Independence or the students over there are certainly seeing that school board elections really do affect their lives in a quite personal and private way. So
Mhm.
that's something else we could think about. I mean, just in
Well,
terms.
I was kind of thinking that horse was already out of the barn. Didn't something just pass recently that made it that you couldn't? They were trying to nip in the bud the
Oh,
idea
really?
that,
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
well, you hear things and
Yeah.
then it's, what do you know? But we'd have to check that out. I think something or is coming up. I don't know that they were really wanting to say that you had to be 18 and that they weren't going to allow, it was allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections.
I
Oh,
think that was part of the
Yes.
one of the ballot issues,
Yes,
November ballot.
yeah.
The other voting issue is ranked voting. I don't know. I don't know where.
And that was on the ballot too.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
other,
That
yeah.
passed, it's now on the Constitution,
Yep,
so.
so there
Yeah.
will be no ranked choice voting in Missouri.
Right.
It's gone. Yeah.
Back to civics. I graduated from high school in 1964, so that gives you an idea of how long ago it was. But 7th through 12th grade every year was a class on the government or civics that were city, local, state, and federal. And I remember it being kind of grueling, but I don't know. But the thing is, if we're talking about civics now, are we talking federal? Or are we talking state? Because
All of it.
it is, well, that's what I wanted to be clear about. I think it ought to be all of it.
Well, because it feeds into each other. You can't really talk about the federal without really understanding how it works with the states and then the states, how it works with the local. I mean, I don't think you can really separate them.
Right. And remember, one thing we were taught was that how different the states could be and how they were ruled or how they functioned.
Right.
So something like that too.
Yeah.
There has been bills introduced, but I don't know that would require civics to be taught and be, you'd have to pass it. In fact, I remember and the timing, I was getting voter registration at Hickman Mills and, I went to the civics or the social studies and all this, but they had literally changed that class that was required to pass to sophomore because they had too many seniors that weren't passing it and then it was affecting their graduation. So they changed it to younger, which then made it hard because that would be the place to go and get them to register to vote, but they were too young to register to vote, type of thing.
Oh, I see
So,
what you're saying. Yeah.
because they weren't 17 and a half.
And one of the other things is we go to register people who have just become naturalized citizens, and they know more about the American government than most of our high school students do.
For me.
Most of our
Most of us. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe we could just sort of try to at least equal the education that people who come here from other countries know. I mean,
I think it's pretty strict. I think the test that they have to take is pretty strenuous.
It is.
Not
It's
easy.
very
Yeah.
strict. It's very strict. But I think we might posit the whole position on we should know as much as the naturalized citizens
Right.
know.
Yeah, that won't go over real big, but
Yeah, well, I know, but
well, they also were trying, this was it last year when they had all these LGBTQ bills going for education, with sports and with healthcare, and there were a lot of parents bringing their high school children, their children down who were in were under 18, they were 60, they were high school kids, and they were going to be affected by all these bills, and they came to the hearings, and so they were standing room only. I mean, there were so many of them that the legislature tried to pass a bill. I don't think it worked because I think that's a First Amendment right. They tried to pass a bill that you had to be 18 in order to attend a hearing. Yeah, and I think that's just illegal, but they're trying to keep these kids out because they don't want them to have a say because they know what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that they didn't pass that as a rule.
Oh, that could have been
do it as a rule for the legislature.
I wonder how.
Because I heard that too. And
But
I
I
think,
wonder though, if that's not unconstitutional, you can't just disallow the public to come into these hearings.
well, the kids don't have money to go to court.
Well,
Yeah,
no, or their parents, but the ACLU does.
right, right. So I wanted to move on to the second big question. I realize our time is drawing short. At the May meeting, you will vote to affirm the current LWV KC positions.
Okay.
I think the question is, would you vote to affirm? And if not, is it because you think we need additional positions? And if you do think that, would you be interested in heading up a committee to do a study with the goal of adding a League of Women Voters Kansas City position, and for what topic? And I think we kind of discussed it a little bit, but just if you had any other thoughts, like whether you would vote on the current positions as is, or if you feel like there needs to be an addition. I think we kind of touched on that. But.
I would just share that I always vote to keep all of our positions, and then I'll vote to add, for study too. It's not eliminating that, but
Okay.
we had the experience of, the Missouri court system that came from Missouri. It was a positive thing, and it's been on our books for so long, and we thought it was all resolved. And so the state let that position drop. And then lo and behold, there was attack on the Missouri court system, and we had to do a quick, short review and take it to all the leagues, to re-vote on it. So even though I think some of our positions locally are lacking and need updating, and I always say, save them, because you never know, we
Right.
might be able to use one sentence in them or something. So
Well, so it's not an either or. I mean, we can say, yeah, we want to
right.
keep them, but we also feel that there should be some new ones maybe added down
Yes.
the road.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, you have that option, and that's what we've done for years, as
Okay.
we've added.
Okay.
and
Well, no,
then
that's
we've
good to know,
added.
Donna. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think the question is, are there new ones? And if so, would there be interest in forming a committee?
Well, we had Brandy say she would help.
Well, I mean, I do think, well, it depends. I think that we have to talk about education because it's, like I said, you could put that under civil rights, healthcare. I mean, it's just all those education bills are just so difficult to untangle.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be a tough one. I mean, we'd have to decide what we're actually going to study.
Right. And I think the beauty about being a committee chair for a committee like that is you get to do the agenda setting to some degree. So just to keep that in mind, if you feel strongly about something, have a conversation, talk to somebody, see if they would be interested in co-chairing or chairing, and yeah. And then the last question is, did you get a chance to say what you wanted to during this meeting and express, where you think the league's time and energy should be spent?
I just want to add one thing that is not a position kind of thing, because it has to do with voting and in a way civics too, because I think we need to start engaging young people at an earlier age, at least 16, in the education. And even if we have to do it, I mean, I feel like I've done that several times at registration events. And I know, Marianne, you've been with me several times when we
Yes.
really are educating these students because
Yes,
they don't know. They
And I-
absolutely are clueless. I've had several say to me, I'm so afraid. I have no idea what to do. They're not being taught how to even go and vote. Like, like a fake election. They have no idea. I told this one girl, she was afraid, to vote because she was afraid people would find out. And I said, they can't find out. You go in and you're in a little cubicle and you just, you vote the way you vote and nobody can see how you're voting. And then you put it in a machine and nobody sees it. And she just had no idea she thought that people would be able to find out how she voted.
Yeah, Reva, I really agree with you. I think all of these education efforts, and I said this in the education committee before too, that we really need to start younger because by the time they get to be 18 or 20, they've become cynical and I mean, it isn't as an effective learning process the later you go. And especially things like civics and voting, because you want that to become habitual. You want that to be part of their worldview. And it's hard to get in after they've been around for too long. So,
Well, also after they go to college, I think that's a whole different ballgame when they're in
oh
high
yeah,
school.
no, yeah,
So-
you're right. You're
Right,
right.
in their high school, they're kind of in this small
Yes,
community. And it's
exactly.
much easier to get to them when they're in college. They're all over the place, so
There,
I think high school definitely we got to start at 16, if not even earlier.
no, you're absolutely right. I
Excuse me.
totally agree with you.
Earlier. And you're talking 16, but with the rules now, at least in Missouri, where you have to be almost 7 to even start kindergarten,
Mhm.
it seems like sophomore year of high school ought to be the target grade.
Oh, I think junior high.
Well, middle school, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
ninth grade, eighth
And
or ninth grade.
studies that show that kids, or young people, I should say, that start voting when they can,
Mhm.
they vote for the rest of their lives.
And the people that parents who take their children with them to vote, those children usually end up voting.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, am I hearing that maybe the energy should be used to develop um, a program to go into the schools to
Well, something
educate?
needs to happen. If they're not getting it from the curriculum, something needs to happen. I don't know what's going on with civic teachers. Do they even have them anymore? I don't even know.
Well, we are looking in the forums committee to find out who is the lead social studies teacher.
Okay.
So that we can ask them to give credit or something for their kids viewing the forum, writing a question or such. So that is information that could be shared with
Yeah.
voter education committee or
I
others.
agree,
Or,
yeah.
and a lot of times they always asked, I was a voter service team that did registration, did into the classroom and whatever. So,
Well, that could be maybe a subcommittee of voter education, that just specifically looks at the youth, a new program. I don't know how Greg would feel about that because he's the voter ed person, but if there was a subcommittee headed by somebody, that's a possibility. We could just put it under them.
I did voter
And we did,
registration at a high school, charter school, on Front Street. I can't remember now what it was called. And we did voter registration and I can't remember what prompted it, but I said something to one of the teachers or one of the adults there about, do they do a mock election? And they're like, what do you mean? And so I gave them an example, like you could have them, have ballots where they are pretending to vote for, the president or senators or something. And it was like, they
Over
had
their
no
heads.
idea, like it never occurred to them. It wasn't anything they'd ever conceived of. And
Wow.
that would be an awesome program to go in,
Yeah.
set up a mock election and go in and run it and simulate the privacy and everything.
Right.
Hmm.
They should be doing that. So if
I
they're
know.
clueless about it, then obviously they're not, Kelly.
I
Yeah,
know. And that was just one school. And that's the only time, for some reason, it happened to come up in the conversation. I don't remember what prompted it, but.
the
Well,
problem with
like it's the teachers in the administration are of an age where they didn't have it.
yeah, but it's really hard to get into the
Public schools.
Public schools are very rigid about who gets in.
Yeah.
I mean,
But even if you had curriculum that you could just give them, like a booklet and worksheets and PowerPoint and everything. So, we couldn't even physically have to go in. We could even say, here's free materials.
okay.
Well, I think we'd have to contact the teachers and see how they'd feel about that.
Yeah,
we want to make sure we're not stepping on toes, but.
Well, they'd have to request it, but, we
Right.
can make it available.
But I think,
Well-
we should have a conversation saying, that those of us who register voters high school, high school and college, are, become aware that these students did not have this kind of education, and how can we change that? How can we help them with that?
All right, Brandy,
Remember,
I wanted just a second. I wanted to, Brandy's had her hand up for a
Okay,
while.
sorry, Brandy.
Yeah, no, sorry. Didn't this come up before and we couldn't get anybody to like chair a committee, like trying to engage youth more, or was
Yeah,
that?
I think, I think we did.
Yeah.
But this might be, if we
No.
start with the education element of it, that might be a good place to start.
Something
Yeah.
more
Yeah, because
specific.
Brandy's right, because it had to be taken away from our list of things because we couldn't get a chair for it.
Right.
But it said youth, and I see that kind of different than the civics going
Right.
into the, I didn't see that as
Right.
that the focus, but maybe it was. I would just share with you that the league has purchased Voter Girl, and it is a program to reach out to the Girl Scout organization.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's a full agenda and such, and you get speakers and all. And Stacy Webb was working
Oh,
on
that's
that.
right.
I was one of them too.
Carol was working on it.
Yeah.
I saw the presentation at a national convention and such. So it can be pulled out of the files and added as something that's already,
What is that, Donna? Again, what's the name of that?
Voter Girl.
Oh, Voter Girl. Okay.
Yeah, and Stacy and Ann Calvert and I went to the last one. It was a joint effort with the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, Kansas. And it was an all-day thing.
Okay.
And wonderful. And it was girls like age 7 to 12.
Okay.
And they did mock elections. They had female politicians, attorneys, and judges there. So anyway, and you can go different directions.
Mhm.
Well, it can go clear up to the top
On the
Girl Scout.
get resurrected. So
And such, but when you were talking about having an election, Kelly, I was thinking, one of the things they had for the daisies or the brownies, they
mhm.
were to vote on their favorite ice cream.
Yeah.
When the election, which strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, what won?
We'll never agree on that. Yeah, and I just want to go back to just folks, if you have not had a chance to say what you wanted to this meeting, we just have a couple minutes left. So I'll just open it up to maybe people who haven't spoke as much as others.
Can I just tell a brief story? It's just not really responsive to what you, I am a docent at the Nelson Atkins, and we have a tour of American art that focuses on democracy. And I did a tour last week for a group of 9-year-olds from Independence. And they were all lovely and attentive and responsive, which made me feel great. But we were talking specifically about a 19th century painting involved with voting, and it has a politician. And so part of the deal is you ask the group to vote, is this man going to get elected or not? And it really doesn't matter what the group says. But so then I go into my little League of Women Voters thing about how women couldn't vote and African Americans couldn't vote. And I was going on to something else, and one girl raised her hand and said, "And you have to be 18. And I was so impressed. At 9, she knew that you had to be 18 to vote. So I hope that will warm your hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Was there anything anyone didn't say that they wanted to say? All right. Well, I don't want to take more of your evening than you've planned, so I appreciate all of your time this evening to offer your thoughts of what the league's priorities should be the next 2 years for our program. And I think it'll be all the ideas and all the information is going to be just collated by Anne and a team, and then we'll be taking your suggestions and bringing them forward at the May meeting. So definitely join us for the May meeting and all your other activities until then. And I know, the league is just good because we have some awesome people who are members and volunteers. So thank you for all you do for the league, and thank you for your input tonight. And have a wonderful evening.
Well,
Good
thank you
luck
for
to the
hosting.
board.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
All
Thanks,
right. We'll see you
I've seen
soon.
everyone.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.